the attention does not persist, try to take 2 to 3 deep breaths and then carry on there. So now try to shift our attention to our body, beginning with the head. Try and notice any sensations that you feel in your head. Just observe its temporary nature. Any sensation in your head, just observe it and see how it passes away without you doing anything about it. Just observe it. Shift your attention lower towards your neck and your chest area. Try and observe any sensations you feel there. Just observe it.
Is the voice clear to you? The rest of the people? Okay.
So try observing your hands, hands and fingers. If there's any sensation you feel there, try and pay attention to that. Your attention lower towards your abdomen, lower abdomen, towards your thighs and legs. See if you can feel anything there. Observe and observe its temporary nature, how it passes away with time. your attention back to your breath or to any body part if that's easier to concentrate. You go back to your head, try and observe. Do you feel the same sensations as you did the first time round? And have some of them passed away?
Good. Thank you, Diksha. Thank you very much. Can open our eyes. You can see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, welcome to this penultimate class on this Zoom session. We have been discussing the applications of what we have studied about teachings of the Buddha. Last time we saw the Western approach and got introduced to the Buddhist approach of what are the personality types and how they can be used for various purposes, while the main objective of them is to support the liberation or awakening of the people from the ignorance in which we are enmeshed. And I hope you remember these are the different approach altogether of identifying the temperaments. And in what way was it different from the Western approach? What is the key distinction between this approach and the Western approach of identifying personality and the personality disorders?
Sir, the Western approach, it describes the behavior that this thing happens in this. But in this approach, in the Buddhist approach, we describe that why this happened. We go beyond the surface appearances to discover the why behind that.
Good. So the classification itself is done on the basis of the reason which could be behind the behavior. And when we have discussed these three are the unwholesome roots which cause unwholesome behavior of various kinds. And then there are their counterpart positive roots, Saddha Charita, Buddhi Charita, and Vitakta Charita. And we discussed it last time. I just wanted to review it quickly. So who will describe this? Because it's already written quite a bit, but Yes, Sumedha, can you describe this diagram which you can see on your screen? Please unmute yourself.
So, sir, basically, all of us have all of these three characteristics in different amounts, and this diagram basically explains the way in which it can positively affect and in the way it can negatively affect. Uh, so if lobe is there, so lobe can, if there's an excess of lobe, it can affect in negatively in form of a craving that we can have, and that will again lead to clinging and the whole process. And if it is in a positive way, so in a if it is channelized in a positive way, it may lead to faith and shraddha and ultimately into optimism, and likewise the other two also. So for dosha, it if negatively, it will be criticism, and this and if positively, it will be, we'll have a clarity of things. If we there'll be a positive way of criticizing things, and then will there'll be a clarity of what is right, what is wrong. And again, with more also, it can lead to doubt or it can lead to equanimity.
And how do you remember the way how we identify by observation which is the prominent trait in a person? What are the specific ways of identifying a lobe charita? Can somebody point out?
Yes, sir. So there were different ways, the posture, the eating habits. um
So, what is the posture about lobha? Our eating habits, all right. What kind of food does a lobha character generally like to eat?
I remember, sir, but I'm not sure which one fits into which.
You can just visualize it and think about it. Anybody else would like to say? Pravleen, I think she can say something. Yes, Pravleen, are you hearing? She doesn't seem to hear. Speaker है रखा है कि नहीं? Okay, then who else is there? Let me see. And Rani, can you please make a guess? It said posture, which is eat. How does one walk? What are the kind of foods one likes? What are the actions which one usually does? When one enters the house of somebody, what would a dos charita observe? What would a lob charita observe? And what would a moha charita observe? Do you remember?
Sir, am I audible?
Anybody?
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you
Am I
are.
audible?
But the voice is not clear to me, at least. I don't know.
Okay. Uh, just a second. Is it better now?
Good, good. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, regarding the eating habits, it was something about the maybe not particularly about the type of food, but how you eat it. So, the one with a dominant lobe characteristic, I think, um, they tend to take larger lumps of food in their mouth, um, and probably swallowing without chewing in a proper manner, maybe something like that.
This is what was the Loba characteristic.
Mm,
And you can see why. Because sweetness is usually liked by most people, isn't it? So that creates a craving. Whether um, bitter thing, with food with chilies, uh, the people who would like it would be those who like to get uh, slightly unpleasant feeling on the tongue. So you can see this is the Lobha Charitra, Dosa Charitra. He walks in the quickly, eats rough and sour food, eats hurriedly because he's always in a hurry. And the key thing is that seeing even a slightly unpleasant object, he will make strong observations and avoid seeing it. Not put, and point out the faults rather than the good things which may come on seeing something, some entering a house. And those Moha Charitra, of course, is perplexed, so he doesn't really know what's going on. He's lost in his own thinking process. No settled choice about anything, about food or clothing or actions. I have now had a quiz which is used to discover personality types. Can you read it all?
Yes, sir.
Take out your notebook and answer that. Do this quiz fully and find out what is your personality. You can do it in two stages rather than one, which means there may be more than one thing may be true, no? So for every query, you can write down first preference and second preference so that you can know the main type as well as the subtype. Okay. So when you read this question, when you go to a friend's house, this, what would you notice most likely first thing? And then second thing. And in this way, so that we can save some time. Actually, it is done first once, then again second time to locate the subtypes. So please do that. Spend some time to get some good insights. I think there are 13 questions, so I've showed 7 here on the screen and another screen, and so go ahead and do it.
everyone done?
Everybody done with them?
Yes, sir.
So done with them, please raise your hands so that I can know and then reveal the answers. Okay, one. So you can put the first preference in one column, second preference in another column, and then count how many A's, how many B's, how many C's. So you'll be getting an idea. So everybody done? Anybody left?
So I'm left.
So I presume everybody is through with all the questions. Anybody still wanting some more time? Okay.
So I want some time.
Okay. Bicycle is incidentally the name of that magazine from where this has been taken. You may be wondering what is this bicycle. It's a Buddhist magazine which publishes interviews and articles of for general public.
Sir, done.
Okay, so I give these answers as the key. Don't mind the terminology of greed, aversion, and hate and delusion. So you would not like to be trapped in the condition of deluded. So don't take it literally. It's a classification. So can you share with us where do you find yourself? Primary type and the subtype. First, the primary type. You can just put it in the chat if you don't want to speak out.
For my first preference, it was a tie between A and C. Like I had six responses each for
You can put
A
it down on
type,
the
and
put it down in the chat so I can see at a glance. Okay. You can write type, say A, subtype B or C or whatever it is. It'll be simpler to have a look at the whole thing.
second preference is the subtype.
The voice is not very clear somehow. That's the problem.
Um, I'm asking, is the second preference the subtype?
Yeah. So take all the first preferences that correspond, and those will correspond to the primary type, and take all the second preferences you have written and see whether they are mostly A or B or C. And very simplistic classification, but very instructive. You can't say two primary types. ये तो ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. Primary type should be one.
It was a tie. Like
So you
both
can
of them had six
correct
responses.
it, Diksha. You can correct it. Okay, you can just delete this and write again. So primary type A as well as subtype A. Is it? So it's A plus plus. Who's one person has not replied? Yes, Indrani. Okay. So all of you have commonality of primary type being A, isn't it? So you must all be very good friends of each other, I think. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this we have already done. I'm doing setbacks. Now, what are the typical combinations? Of course, here they are mentioning some idea. You can read this example which the author has given. Meditation student is chief financial officer in an international company. She is responsible for detailed and accounting practice, gets easily agitated with her co-workers and low level of anger. This is her primary type, so it will be aversion is the primary. And secondary issue is greed. She craves nice things and so on. So it is aversion primary, greed secondary combination. Does it make sense to you? Hmm? Any comments on this questionnaire or the E or whatever?
Could you please go to the that slide in which some explanation was written after the answer key?
Yeah, right. I'm not able to hear whether the sound is not very distinct.
Sir, Diksha is asking that if you could go on to the next slide where the answers were given.
Hmm? Yes.
And the next one, where there is some explanation. The next slide.
There's no explanation. And this one is it? Another example. So are you able to gel with this kind of personality types, or you're used to Myers-Briggs and all that? Have you taken that test? Did you actually do the test for yourself and find out where you stand in that 16 parameters? So how does this tally with that? Any comments? Can you see any way by which you can relate the two? Or is it too much to ask, is it?
Sir, I think in both the type of tests, there's this element of not having that clarity. I mean, you are confused. Ki, okay, this this can be true, but this also seems true. I mean, the fact that it is about yourself, but still you do not have that clarity, and you juggle between various options. So that was a common thing in both the types of tests, even this one and the various personality tests that we have done.
Yeah, because they are trying to quantify what is something subjective. So any attempt at that's why psychological these queries and questionnaires which I did, for example, in Tihar jail for the prisoners, whether they were benefited by meditation or not, they have their own limitation, So you ultimately end up doing statistical tests to find out whether they mean anything or not. But it's only to give an overall perspective. If there is a dominant result, for example, if all the 13 questions, the first option is A, then it shows distinctly the personality type. If there are 6 A's and 5 B's and 2 C's, then of course it means there's a mixture of all of them. Then if the answers are given properly, then the subtype will show the second answer. So if you have done the primary properly, then subtype will show the second answer automatically. Now, what is the whole purpose of all that? As psychologists, you may more be interested in seeing how it is related to because their personalities in discussions in the Western paradigm, they are all related to personality disorders, and then how do we really treat them? What kind of therapies are to be done, isn't it? So here also, that must be the purpose. So then, how do you define the mental illness in this category, in this paradigm, in this way of thinking? What is this whole issue of mental health and sickness? Now, when I'm going to give you the answer, you'll all be, so don't be shocked if you see the answer they give. In Western paradigm, you identify some people who are really odd or eccentric or obsessive compulsive or whatever, isn't it? But there are some who are normal, or majority are normal, and a few percentage are in the ill. But the Buddha's teaching tell us is actually all of us are ill. So don't get angry with him for saying so. Try to understand what is being said. All of us are under the influence of varying intensities of the three defilements or intoxicants, you can call that. Lobha, dosa, and moha are mentally unhealthy. So in the Buddha's way, a mentally healthy person is one who is fully enlightened. Other than that, everybody is unhealthy. So there's no stigma cast on anybody. There's no difference between a person who is in the hospital undergoing treatment and the person who is doing the treatment. There's only a difference of degree, not of kind. Do you get that point? In the Western paradigm, doctor is healthy and the patients are unhealthy. In this paradigm, doctor is mildly unhealthy, patient is slightly more unhealthy. So that empathy becomes an integral part of the practice. So a counselor of this kind would always be kind aware. Well, if this person is obsessive, I'm also very prone to get into that. If this person is addict, I'm also marginal addict. I mean, I have some degree of control, but he may be addicted to drugs, I'm addicted to chocolate. That's it. You see what difference it makes between the two paradigms of thinking? Just demolishes all class differences. So all of us are mentally unhealthy. And it's interesting that even some distinguished Western psychologists recognize it. I've read it there's a quotation from Eric Fromm. You know them, Eric Fromm? Have you heard the name? This is what he says about the well-being of human beings. And you can see an echo of what the Buddhist paradigm is. Well-being is possible to the degree to which one has overcome one's self-love. Narcissism is self-love. That is, we all have a sense of I am the best. To the degree to which one is open, responsive, sensitive, awake, empty. Empty meaning no sense of self. Well-being means finally to drop one's ego. To give up greed, cease chasing after preservation and aggrandizement of the ego. To be and to experience oneself in the act of being, not in having, preserving, coveting, using. So it's being, not having. There's a difference. And you can see to drop one's ego means
Moha.
delusion of sense of separation. Greed is lobha, and chasing after preservation and aggrandizement is in some sense fear, arising out of fear. So, in a broad sense, almost talking the same things of three intoxicants of lobha, dosa, and moha, which make us mentally unhealthy. Is it acceptable? Is it understood, or any questions or any criticism of this way of defining mental illness and mental health? Now, how is this type going to help us? And that's the real purpose of this whole exercise. All this typology is because they are able to tell us what are the tasks associated with each personality type. So each personality type, how does it become healthy, fully healthy? That's the task. So you can call it a treatment if you like. And it says a spiritual task. What is why spiritual? Because it is essentially concerned with purifying the mind. So read it out. Each type has a spiritual task to accomplish. The spiritual type of task of the greedy type is to transform the desire for sense objects into desire to know the, you can say the Dhamma, three jewels means Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, or understand the, develop, go from greedy type into the faith type. And then it points out how to set the balance. Greedy types needs to balance their optimism with an awareness of suffering. Practices that help the greedy type include contemplation of old age, sickness, death, impermanence. These are the kind of contemplations which we do. That we are all going to age, we are all going to fall ill, we are all going to die. Everything is impermanent. We are going to get separated from those whom we love. Now, these may seem to be like morbid contemplations, but they are hard facts of life. So a person who has a greedy type, who is excessively optimistic and can't see the life, it means his perception of the world life is distorted towards positivity. So to bring it back, they point out to him the real nature of the life, human experience. Everything is not positive. There are negative aspects too, in the sense of unpleasant aspects of life. Then there's meditation on 32 parts of the body. This is specifically for people who have strong lust. Lust arises from greed for body. Good body is so beautiful. So the person who has got that excessive addiction towards opposite gender is asked, he or she is asked to study the human body properly, not get carried away by the external envelope of the skin. So you just open up the external skin and have a peep inside. What is the beauty inside? What are the beautiful things which come out of the body? So that's the way of balancing the lust. Then balancing the greed by generosity, balancing possessiveness by renunciation, by charity, by being giving up the attitude of acquisitiveness. Putting oneself in uncomfortable, unpleasant situations in order to become disenchanted with sense pleasures. So these are the kind of suggestions which are made for that type of personality. Whether it is really bordering on normal or bordering on abnormal, task is similar. There's no difference. If you and I have a greedy personality, we are advised to do these practices so that they can be balanced. And a rapist will also be advised to do the similar practices. He will be advised to contemplate on 32 parts of the body. He would be asked to, he would be shown a um, video of a postmortem or asked to go to a charnel ground, a crematorium, or asked to go to a autopsy room and stay there and see how autopsy is done and what is inside the body. These are the practices. If a person is miserly, and if I am excessively miserly, I am advised, develop this capability of generosity. Then for the aversive type, what will be the task? You can see to transform the critical mind through wisdom and insight. You remember the corresponding type is Buddhi type, Buddhi Charita. So he's advised to relax and question their beliefs about this is the right thing and nothing else is right. And not get carried away by unpleasant things. Notice the joy in life. So to a greedy person, a Lobha Charita person, you will say, look at the suffering. To a person who is given to aversion, you will say, look at the joys in life. And you practice them. Their practices of loving kindness, compassion, mindfulness of mind, humor, faith, patience, and putting oneself in pleasant surroundings in order to soften the heart and connect with life. So you can see how beautifully the so-called treatments, or whatever you may wish to say, are developed based on the personality type itself, and they are universally applicable to everybody. And then for the deluded type, who is always confused, is asked to transform his spaciousness into a state of equanimity, which means they need to first learn how to control the mind. For example, practice anapanasati so that mind becomes less deluded. So practices include noting mindfulness of hindrances of doubt, body awareness, experiencing the bodily feelings, then yoga, mindfulness of the earth element, putting oneself in safe and pleasant surroundings to prevent dissociation. So you can see how the spiritual tasks are identified based on personality types, the ones which are unhealthy. For the greedy type, aversive, and the deluded type. And then there are recommended meditations for each of them. I mentioned briefly there. I put a full slide for that purpose. What I have said, I've just put in a summary form here. So have a look and see if if you find yourself in agreement with it, or if you have any question, you can ask me. Read them carefully, see each one. And if you have any difficulty about any practice, you can ask me. So these the mindfulness of breathing you have been doing. You've also been practicing loving kindness and equanimity to some extent, compassion. I've already mentioned to you about that once. We've not talked about the mindfulness of death and other things so as not to frighten you. But if you are up to it, we can do that practice. Because death is a subject which we all want to avoid to discuss, isn't it? So there are very well laid out meditations on mindfulness of death, where we simulate our own death and see how does the mind go through that and prepare ourselves for death. Because you're young and you may think, well, it's not really wanted at this stage. And we always think, that only old people die. Though in the corona, that myth was dispelled for quite some tragically. But it is if done properly, it has a tremendous impact on bringing us back to the ground. How many of you would be willing to go through a session of that kind? No. Arunima has raised. There's a virtual hand you can raise if you like. Ooh. 3, okay. Okay, so we have reservations, so we'll not do that. We'll do it in an intellectual manner. Okay. It's tough, I know that. It's
I
not
have
easy.
a question.
Now,
Sir, I have a question. In the discerning temperament, there was one way of meditation mentioned, something to do with nutriments. I forgot. Could you please take us back to that this perception of repulsiveness in nutriments? What does this mean?
yeah, it means what are the nutriments? Okay, simplest thing in terms of your normal perceptions, I would say. There's a deeper implication because nutriment means something which supports nutrition, it supports body and mind. So mind nutriments may be difficult for you to comprehend at the moment, but physically, food is something which we all eat, isn't it? And we all like to eat food very much. So the person who is given to eating disorder, let me put it in more modern terminology, a person who is given to eating disorder keeps on eating, binge eating, and obese and all that, which is a big problem in modern society, especially the wealthy section of the society. They're asked to start to do practice of repulsiveness of food, seeing what happens to the food when we consume it, so that the kind of enamored one usually is enamored by food, this one, this one, this one. So you give a bit of reflection on, okay, this is the food you got so beautiful, you put it in your mouth, chew it, and now take it out and see how does it look like. Not a very easy thing to do. And then say, okay, now put it back and eat. and then contemplate. It is more of a reflective content. What is happening to the food as going through the mouth? How does it look like? Suppose we do MRI or sorry, CAT scan of the abdomen with food inside. How will it look like? How will that food look like? And how would the food look like when it goes to the intestine and when it is at the colon? What does it transform into? So these kind of contemplations are done to reduce the attachment to food. That's my perception of repulsiveness in food, physical food. Similarly, we talk about mental foods. You get it? Not a very pleasant thing to do, maybe for young people, but once in a while you can try at home. No, don't try at home, at least in isolation. If you're eating alone, then do and see how it changes your perception about food. Not a very difficult thing to do. And eating something, when you have chewed it a little bit, just take it out and see, oh, how beautiful. And then put it back and say, let me eat it now. Okay. Should we go ahead? Now, then there is the issue of cognitive therapy. I've used the modern terminology between Buddhist cognitive therapy and the so-called Western cognitive therapy. What's the difference? The difference is fundamental. They're not trying to change thoughts. It's not positive thinking, but it's changing the relationship to the thoughts. We accept that this is the thought, yeah. But you change the relationship by looking at it in the light of the fundamental nature of existence. So there are a large number of stories in the canon of people who were transformed by suitable expedient means so that their way of looking at their own grief could be changed. And they became free, not just free from the grief, but free from all tames and practiced meditation and got liberated. So I'm thinking of working on the Buddhist story as cognitive therapy. So maybe someday you'll find some book on that. Maybe I tell you one story, okay? The story of Kisavagni. She was a daughter of a rich person or married to another rich family and a conventional family. And she was very lean and thin. Kisami in Pali, Krish was lean and thin. And after marriage, she didn't bear any child for many years. So her appearance was not good, being a lean and thin person, and then not getting a child in those times. I'm talking about 2,600 years ago. Probably partly it exists even now. Then the family would say, hey, this is a useless daughter-in-law. And she was derided and, humiliated in variety of ways. After many years, she got a son, and things started changing for her. She was being more respected as mother of a son and so on. And as the child grew, about 8 years or 7 years old, he was bitten by a snake and he died. And now she's totally deluded. Absolutely. She can't believe because she fears what's going to happen to her. So she's not willing to believe that the son has died. She just takes it on her shoulders and goes from one doctor to another, one vet to another, one family. Please do something to her son. They will tell her the snake has bitten, she's died. What can we do? But she's just not able to accept, and it's totally deluded, absolutely deluded. No, he can't die, he can't die, he can't die. He's just sleeping. Please give him some medicine so that he sleeps, wakes up. So people realize that there's no way that she'll listen to any doctor or anything. And one of the persons, wise man, said, okay, there is Buddha's here and visiting this place. Why don't you go and tell him? He's a great man. He'll do something for you. And maybe he'll bring him back to life. So she goes and takes her son and puts it before him and says, my son is sleeping. He's not able to get up. So please help him get up. The Buddha sees that child is dead. But she won't listen to any Dhamma, she won't listen to any objective or method of understanding that everybody dies. So she won't understand that. So he tell, okay, I'll give him, wake him up. You do one thing, you get 5 mustard seeds from any house in the city, but get it from a house where nobody has died. So she goes from one house and says, please give me 5 mustard seeds. Buddha has asked me to get it from anybody's house. I said, fine, you take 10. Why not? And but says, okay, you tell me, did anybody ever die in your house? I said, of course. My mother died, another says my father dies, another says my son died. And from morning till evening, she goes on to the whole of the city. And obviously, you know what answer she would get. And her mind is settled about, oh my God, it's not just me who's losing a son. So many people have lost their son. So many people have lost their dear ones. And she's brought back into the senses. And then she goes to Buddha and lifts her son up. He says, hey, come on, why didn't you get the 5 seats? He says, oh, done, I'm done with it. I know. She takes the son, goes to the crematorium and does it. And then she says, I will leave the householder's life and become a nun. And she became a nun and became finally fully enlightened. She's one of the enlightened nuns of the Buddha's periods. And this story is recorded in there's a book called Therigatha, which is the first book written by women saints anywhere in the world. The women saints of Buddha. Isavatmi was one of them. She's described her story and how she became fully enlightened by practicing meditation with her. So that's the transformation, that's the cognitive therapy really working. Based on changing the relationship to the event. Thoughts. Thought of my son having died is being transformed to just thousands of people have their sons die. And this is one of the overriding themes, because many women would get destitute because of the death of a family member, and another grandson, another woman lost her husband, 2 sons, mother, father on the same day. Now imagine what would be her plight. She just tore her clothes and was roaming around naked in the city. And then series of events happened. And she also became ultimately fully enlightened. So that's the transformation of cognitive therapy, giving suitable teaching to the person in a suitable manner so that the person is able to grasp the reality of life, not giving a false hope. No false hope. And the biggest of the cognitive therapies is the 4 Noble Truths. For people who are mildly deluded like us, this is the therapy. They understand there is suffering, stress, or whatever, dukkha, and you're told you can understand it. Come on. Be brave and sit and understand that. Find out its reason and remove the reason. Come on. And there's guidance available how to do it. That is using your experiential understanding to overcome suffering of various kinds, any kind. And one of the common practices is to reflect on the facts of life, or inviolable truths. some of which I mentioned. For example, these are part of the daily chantings actually. In our meditation sessions every day, we chant these things. They're called themes for repeated reflection. This is one such 5 themes. Buddha advises to all his disciples that everybody, monks or laymen or laywomen, you should chant these every day. They're the 5 facts that one should reflect on often, whether one is a woman or a man, lay or ordained. Ordained means a monk who's given up house. Which 5? I am subject to aging, I am not exempt from aging. I am subject to illness, I am not exempt from illness. Subject to death, I am not exempt from death. I must be parted and separated from all that is dear and appealing to me. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related through my actions, and have actions as my arbitrator. Whatever I do for good or evil, for that I will fall here. These are incontrovertible truths. And it says, chant it every day and reflect upon it and remember that. What will this do? When the event happens, when you are about to get old, when you fall critically ill, when you die, or one of your your near and dear ones dies and is or is separated from you, or becomes of a different changes its temperament, then you know this is the law of nature. There's nothing unusual. Do not ask the question, why me? Which is the usual question when we suffer. So you can see how the graduated path of training the mind is developed. You just have to chant these every day and reflect upon them. Is this true that I am subject to aging? Is there somebody who's not? Is it true that I can fall ill? I will fall ill. Is there somebody who has not fallen ill in this world? If I am subject to death, is somebody who is exempt from death? Is there somebody who can say that he'll never be separated from his near and dear ones? And can I escape the consequences, fruits of my action? Is it ever possible? So this is the type of reflection. This is called reflective meditations. You sit, chant, and reflect upon them and try to internalize them slowly and slowly every day. When you do this every day for 20 years, it'll become a part of your being. And then when events happen, you fall ill, you or your family member falls ill, you become old, or your parents become old, or your grandparents become old, or they pass away. You know, nothing unusual. You don't have to be asked to go and get 5 grains of mustard and find out that people do die. Because you contemplated on it on regular basis. Okay?
Sir, I
Yeah.
have a question.
Please go ahead.
Sir, how to reflect on these issues of like death of loved ones without getting overwhelmed? Because when I like try to think of them, so I get very overwhelmed and like tears start flowing down, and then I just like deny it, or like I try not to think about it.
Yeah, anybody can answer that question? Because when you're contemplating, it's an emotion is arising, isn't it? That's what you say, but objectively. And when an emotion arises, what are we advised to do? We have studied it, we have practiced it. What are we advised to do? It's just a thought. So you see, that's why the whole practice of meditation is done. Emotion is arising, you see, oh, this emotion, I'm getting emotional. I'm crying. Fine, no problem. You're not afraid and ashamed of crying. There's no problem. my heart is, and so you understand what is the cause of suffering. This you try to understand it. You see your body, you feel the mind, and you sit. That's what I said, understanding suffering. This is a suffering, experience of suffering. So you sit and try to sit under it. Understand means to sit under it. And see, this is what's happening in my body. See, my mind is not ready to accept it. And you just keep on seeing this sadness, 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 sadness. See what's happening in the body. Keep on seeing it again and again and again. Slowly the mind will come to peace. And then you realize, oh, it's because of my attachment to my parents, or attachment to my loved ones, or my spouse, or whatever, boyfriend, whatever, girlfriend, whatever it may be, wife, husband, whatever. So you know that for directly, you know from your own deep experience. And it should be given up. It's going to cause suffering. And it is causing me suffering. Very thought is causing me suffering. When it happens, what will I do? I know of people who lost their husband, just one of our meditators lost her husband, say 6 years after her marriage. They have a 5-year-old child. COVID devastated. Nobody else to support. She was not having job. She had given up the job before her husband's illness. That's it. Life can be terrible. And in COVID, we have seen how much our friends died and how much suffering their family members have had to undergo. And to the extent they were prepared for it, to that extent the suffering was reduced. So that young lady, she was prepared. She knew she had been exposed to teachings for a long time. So it's fine. She took it in stride. She took her husband's dead body to her mother, husband's mother, 1,000 kilometers away in a car. Imagine. That's it. Life can be very tough. So we can't run away from that. It's not positive thinking, नहीं ऐसा नहीं होगा, don't worry, don't worry. No. ऐसा हो सकता है. किसी के साथ भी कभी भी हो सकता है. So that's why it is said, these are my reflective contemplations. And what does he say? These are 5 facts that one should reflect on often, whether woman or a man, day or ordained. This is actually the words of the Buddha. It says 5 things everybody should reflect every day. Because that prepares you for being a brave person. That brings you in consonance with the reality of the life. Okay? So there are similar contemplations. So I will, I think, stop before you get overwhelmed by them.
I have a question. As we were going through these 5 facts, so I was reminded of the kind of literature that there's this book called The Secret and other kinds of literature of these kinds, wherein they talk about something like the law of attraction. And I remember that's something I used to read in my teenage years. That's what I used to sort of cope up with whatever stress I used to feel in those times. So now in context of all this, if I think about it, it seems not talking about matters such as death, but even like the most daily, mundane, daily life experiences. It like I don't know if it was more misleading than um because when you're kind of trying to attract something, when you're trying to manifest something in your life, there's also an element of greed involved, that you have a desire, a want for that, and the whole principle of those theories work on that you think about it and you'll have it in your life. So if I just wanted to ask about that, it just there's no question as such, but maybe an observation or something, and it also contrasts all this, and it's such a huge amount of literature that exists of that kind.
Yeah. Positive thinking, positive psychology, all that is there. The trouble is that it is a half truth. That's the problem. It's not total lie. It's half truths. And half truths are often more dangerous than total lies. So somebody insisted I should read it book, and I read it. I think I read about 3/4 of it. I think enough. It's a what should I say? I don't want to criticize anybody, especially a book which has become a bestseller and all that. You know, there's a materialistic thought process. It's basically a question of worldviews. You understand the term worldview? There's a hedonistic worldview, materialistic worldview. That everything that is there in this external world is all that really is, and we must maximize our happiness there. That is at the best, it is the worldly happiness, which I had mentioned to you. There's no mention of otherworldly happiness on beyond other. That doesn't exist in that part of thinking. That doesn't exist. So they are really paupers in that sense. They don't know. They don't have the idea what abilities mind has. There's a famous writer who wrote many bestsellers like The Fountainhead. Do you know her? Have you read that book?
Which book, sir?
Have you heard of Ayn Rand? No. Well, if you're not known, that's good for you. Don't worry. There's a philosophical thought process of pure materialism, and that those kind of things become extremely popular in the West. And now there is a school of thought which recognizes that the dehumanization of the West was done by those books of that kind. You deny everything which is sacred, then you'll be in deep trouble. In Indian tradition, there are fables of that kind. I don't know whether you've heard of them or not. I was in Varanasi for the last 5 days, and there's a very famous story associated with Varanasi. I don't know if you've known about it. Do you know why Varanasi is so considered a holy city in our Indian traditions?
Anybody
Anybody?
who dies there goes to directly heaven.
It's another illusion anyway. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is true. There is a ghat where 24/7 bodies are cremated. We saw that. Yeah, that's true. But that's not the main thing. Who said to have said to have set up that city? Do you know?
Shivji.
Hmm?
Shivji.
Yes. It is associated with Lord Shiva that he set up that city. And there are huge stories about it. So we don't need to go into them. But one of the stories I'm going to talk to you about materialism. Okay. There's a story about a king who came here. Ripunjay was his name. Extremely noble person who cared for his subjects. Okay. And he did penance and got the powers of the 5 elements. Earth, air, fire, water. The powers of sun he had got, the powers of rain he got, the powers of wind he got. Okay. From one of the deities. And he made sure that his kingdom flourishes. Whenever rain was necessary, he would call upon and it would rain. When sun was necessary, he would call upon and sunlight would come. Perfect example of materialistic life. And he led his countrymen, very noble person. He would give them all facilities and they all prospered and became very rich and very rich and very rich. And this is the objective was that we should lead a happy life and we should get prosperity, and everything happened like that. But in the process, the people became self-centered. Because me for myself. I should get the maximum. He should get, everybody tries to get the maximum, and there is enough available because everything is in control. Even the sun, rain, water, sun, air, everything is in control of the king, so he can do anything for the subject. But while prosperity and everything went, the society became degenerate. They weren't ready to help each other because there was competitive. And I see in that story, so then there is some things happen and he's forced to recall, and he actually exiled Shiva from there. He says, I don't need any Deva, you please get out, get lost. So Shiva just walks out, no problem. He says, you don't come here again as long as I'm here. Fine, no problem. And the consequence of that was that exactly this. I see more it as a fable to tell us what will happen when people are materialistic. When you have the paradigm of secrets, that you think and you'll get anything you like. Yeah, you may become prosperous, but you will be subject to aging. You will be subject to illness. You will be subject to death. There will be separation from the beloved. You can't prevent it. So, merely by living in the most ideal way in the outward world life, the world life will never be satisfactory. Worldly happiness of whatever kind will never be an end in itself. Why? Because it is impermanent, fundamentally impermanent, fundamentally unsatisfactory. And that's so difficult to see. And that's the greatness of the Eastern thoughts. You take any of them, Buddha, Mahavira, right up to Kabir, Nanak, they all understand that. Any tradition, Vivekananda, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, anybody in big traditions all agree on these facts. That mere materialistic progress is not going to solve the problems. Even if you attract tons of dollars, you're not going to be happy. You can't be permanently happy. So these type of contemplations, which to a materialistic would look morbid, है क्या शुभ शुभ बोलो क्या सुबह सुबह बैठ के बातें कर रहे हो. Early morning we have the morning sessions of meditation starting at 5:30. We have a group which we formed in the Corona period. With lockdown, we were not able to meet. So that group continues even now. So 5:30 we get up and start saying, Jara dhammu me, jara manutito thi, I'm subject to aging, I'm not. One will say, people are crazy. ये सुबह उठ के क्या कहते क्या बोलते रहते हैं तुम और कुछ नहीं सोचता वही बोलने का. One can say like that, isn't it? But no, it is powerful. It sets your day in order. It makes sure that you don't get lost in the world. That is what cognitive therapy in Buddha means. What do you think? Come on.
Sir, one question related to this. Sir, when when we become aware that when we say every morning that I'm subject to aging, I'm subject to death, then also does it not create a sense of urgency that मेरे को ये चीज करनी है नहीं तो like I
Yeah,
will
bilkul,
die.
bilkul. Yeah, certainly. It creates a sense of urgency. I should be doing that which is really important and not waste my time in stupid endeavors. And therefore, you find out what is important for you, both from materialistic purpose, from the point of view of family, from the point of view of health, and from the point of view of your future, true future, next life. What is going to carry on? There are teachings like that. So beautiful teachings, I can read out to you so many of them, but I'm concerned with young girls getting माता पिता आपके में पिटाई करने शुरू आ जाएंगे क्या बच्चियों को हमारी पढ़ा दिया तुमने but you're grown up so you should be able to handle it तो कोई परेशानी तो नहीं हो रही भाई but these are just examples of changing the perceptions how you change your perceptions of the world perceptions being changed from hallucination to reality we all live in a hallucinating world सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा everything is fine it doesn't mean that we become negative as goes the saying you hope for the best but be prepared for the worst the only thing to be done there is prepare for the worst hoping is not doesn't need any preparation but we often say hope for the best prepare for the worst but we hope and don't prepare for the worst and then when the worst happens as happened in the corona period everybody was caught unawares this chaos there was much more suffering of the people who didn't get infected than those who got infected fear and anxiety and quarrels in the society, domestic people, husband, wife who used to be away for 12 hours of a day, seeing having to force to live together in the house and fighting now. ये क्या हो गया ऑफिस में क्यों नहीं जा रहे हो you're better off in the office rather than at home okay I think enough for the day if you have any questions you can ask and any questions
Sir, can you once again explain that when you were talking about Buddhist cognitive therapy, the basic difference is that we do not change our thoughts. That bit I understood, like transforming our negative to positive. But what do we mean by changing relationship to them? Like, can you explain with an example?
rather than taking the thoughts personally we observe them objectively
Okay, sir.
we see it as a phenomenon it's rising okay by remembering that my parents may die I'm getting unhappy okay this is unhappiness I don't change my thought I don't say no ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा that'll be foolish I say yeah this can happen and this creates suffering in me I look at it this is suffering arising I don't take it hold on to catch hold of it and get frightened I look at it as a thought which has arisen and which it will pass away because I have the understanding. It's just a thought.
Yes, sir.
So you change your relationship to it rather than owning up the thought, oh, this is going to happen. To, yeah, this is the emotion which is arising on thinking like that. And this will arise as and when you are 20, when you are 70-year-old, by that time your parents will be quite old. So you can't prevent them from going. So you're trying to understand the hard reality. And I'm sure you must have noticed in this 2.5 year period was a kind of a education in human values for the whole world. If they want to do it, use it in that sense. What kind of unheard of things happened? Old men surviving corona and their young son dying. Old man says, "My God, I should have died. Why the hell did my son die?" That's it. That's happened so many times. One of our young colleagues in IIT went to see his father-in-law in hospital, got COVID, father-in-law recovered, and he died. What do you do? So that it is, such situations thrust upon you the reality of life. And that's where the education lies. The life's tests teach us a lesson. And I think I mentioned to you once earlier also, a very famous quotation. In the school, we learn a lesson first and then we give a test. In life, we have a test and then we learn a lesson. And that, of course, is not certain. It is optional. Either you want to learn the lesson or not learning. Okay, I think we've crossed the time. So we'll meet tomorrow also and then complete. And on Saturday, I'll come to DU in your department, and then we'll spend some time and discussing the whole course. What did we do and why did we do it? Okay. So we'll do some meditation. Who will do the chanting for us for the meditation in the chanting of loving kindness, which we have been doing, or anything. You can use any words, no problem. Yes, anybody volunteering who's confident of doing? Otherwise, I'll just speak some name. And, Yes, Prabhuleen, come on.
Just
So
regarding the timings once, sorry, before for Saturday, sir, have you talked to Sunit sir regarding the timings for Saturday? Have you confirmed any time or shall I talk to him?
yeah, I have told him. I have written to him long time before going out. 9:30 to 12:30 a.m. I've written him. I've just
So 9:30.
rechecked. I had written to Sneet and he said he confirmed it with me that he has. I asked him to confirm it with you, and he said that yes, he has. He wrote down to me that he has confirmed with you people. I'll again cross check and let you know.
Sir did confirm about the dates and all, but he was, I think, a bit confused about the time at the time we
I
talked.
said I wish to conclude the classes next week. So I says 2 online classes on Thursday 9th and Friday 10th from 2 to 4 p.m. No? That's as usual. Today was 9th, tomorrow is 10th. Then final in-person class, meditation plus question and answer on Saturday from 9:30 to 12:30 p.m. 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then I'd said timing could be changed, but then he replied that I'll do that, and he said confirmed. So he confirmed everything. So I presume
Yes, sir.
it is done with your concurrence. Okay.
Yes, sir. He did say in the morning hours, but when we talked, he wasn't like, I think he forgot the exact timing, but he did say that he'll be in the
Yeah,
morning hours.
that's
So I
it.
just
Yeah,
wanted to confirm.
there was too much
Yes,
data
sir.
there. Yeah, that's okay. That's
Thank
okay. Right. So Prabhuleen will guide us to meditate according to the developing loving kindness for all the beings. We start with ourselves, then with our parents and other as well, then with everybody in the world, and then wishing them well, by all being free from suffering. Okay, good.
May I be free from animosity. May I be free from anxiety. May I be free from ill will. May I be free from suffering. May my parents, teachers, friends, classmates, neighbors be free from animosity, suffering, ill will. May all beings be free from animosity. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from ill will. May all beings be free from anxiety. May all beings be happy.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll meet tomorrow.